Hey,
Hey, Tolga's with us.
hey,
Welcome.
guys.
Hey Tolga.
How you doing, Tolga?
Good, good. How are you? How is the cycling going?
It's doing good so far. Yes. Uh,
They'll,
Amazing.
they'll probably tell you that they've only cycled like 100K so far.
Yeah,
Just,
we're,
just 100K, yeah.
Just
we're
100K.
6.5 hours in so far, Tolga.
Hmm.
And we still
Awesome.
gotta,
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
cool. Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Tolga. Yeah,
Pleasure.
just for some of the people that are listening in that perhaps weren't listening in earlier today, we've just been having some really interesting conversations on mental health and well-being. Um, May is Mental Health Month, and I believe the 18th to the 24th of May is Mental Health Week. So Jack and Zim. Wow, that's where my brain is at. Zach and Jim organized this really great event to raise awareness and also importantly to raise funds for the mental health fund. And we've kind of also used this space to host some great conversations with people that are passionate about everything and anything to do under the umbrella of mental health. So yeah, thanks so much for joining, Tolga. Maybe I could just ask if you could give yourself a bit of an introduction and what kind of brought you here today to chat to us.
Yeah. Uh, it's such a pleasure to be here, like chatting with you guys. I'm Tolga, and I work for Google for the last 5, almost 6 years now. And as well as I teach yoga, I'm really involved with the spiritual practices. And yeah, I will tell about the story, like why I'm actually in this space right now to share. But like the mental health and well-being is really a topic which is really close to my heart. And it's also because I've been through like a lot of issues myself. So that became my like biggest one of my biggest passions in life. So and I like because of those I start to do a lot of research and a lot of work on mental health and well-being. um, yeah, and also like I'm if anyone is wondering about the accent or like who is this guy, uh, I'm from Turkey, Istanbul. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think one of the reasons I was quite excited to speak to you, and it's been echoed in some of the previous conversations today, is that a lot of people that are working in the field of mental health are doing so because they are either super passionate about it, perhaps they've been through a personal experience, or they have a deep level of knowledge on the topic. And it's really great that you've kind of joined from the point of view like you have a personal story that you have learned a lot from. And I think it's been beautiful as a friend of yours to see the way in which you've shared that story and you've helped a lot of people in terms of starting the conversation around mental health. So very excited
Yeah,
that
thanks.
you've joined us today.
Mhm.
Awesome. So maybe I'll also just ask, what initially sparked your curiosity into learning more about mental health?
um, so as I said, like I born in Turkey, and in Turkey, like there's a really big stigma around mental health, and actually there is like really small amount of knowledge on this topic. So until the age like maybe 16, 17, I never actually heard about like mental health is part of health. No, it was something really hidden this in the society that I was growing up. Um, and so how I really start to get interested in this topic? Actually, I wasn't really interested in the topic. I was just like experiencing mental health issues without knowing that I was experiencing the mental health issues, and I was actually really scared, and I wanted to get rid of them. And with this loop of fear and like mystery about like what I'm going through really, and the lack of information and lack of like openness about this topic, I found myself uh, deep diving into this field of mental health, which I discovered later in my stage that which is mental health, and like all the solutions and all the stigmas that I have been living with. Um, yeah, so like that basically created my interest and passion towards the topic.
Yeah, and I think you raised such a valid point with the awareness part. You said that you weren't necessarily actively curious or passionate about it, but you were experiencing it in yourself. And again, we've spoken today about how a lot of people may be experiencing something to do with mental health, but because they're not aware that's that's whatever they're going through is actually part of mental health, and there are tools out there that one can use
Yeah.
to move out of that state. And I'm curious in terms of, you are someone who works more also in the spiritual space. Now,
Yeah.
what role do you see awareness playing in starting the conversation on mental health?
So can you repeat this? Sorry, I lost the connection a bit.
Oh, no worries. No, I was saying, in terms of becoming aware of one's emotional state,
Yeah.
what role does that play in terms of mental health, and perhaps how us as collective human beings can start evolving forward when it comes to our emotional and mental well-being?
Mm. Okay. So I think like basically mental health is such a deep ocean. Like the topic is not really actually super simple to tackle, because it's like really wired, and like the subconscious and the human brain is like really one of the biggest mysteries in this in this universe. Like it's really like it's a huge complicated organism that we are living in and living with, and through that we experience a lot of different states, and like it really creates like a lot of different perceptions for a lot of different people who has like different structures in their brains. Of course, like there are many different types which affects mental health. So basically, there is this like what I'm mostly talking about, this biological effects, like how like the genetics and like neurochemistry and like all the stuff that's happening in your brain. And there's also like social and environmental effects, and also the psychological effects. So and actually this framework, like this combination of these three, is called like biopsychosocial model, which I was really inspired when I first learned about this model, because I was just thinking that everything I'm going through is psychological, like it's happening there, it's happening in my psyche, but actually it's really linked with your biology, it's linked with your DNA, like what your parents transferred you, and what type of childhood, what type of socioeconomic status you are coming from, what, like which culture you are growing up, and what are the stigmas there, what's the family circumstances. So it's like a really massive complicated um like a model of mental health that which we are going through. So that's why I really like have not really structured and simple answers about like
Yeah,
how spirituality can like push us forward, but like I'm really eager to share like what was my journey, and because like to be clear on that, I'm not a professional in mental health field. So I'm just like a personal mental health experiencer, as many of us. But my experience went a bit deep and down. So that's
yeah,
why my interest and just curiosity went deep parallel with this experience.
mm,
So what I would be comfortable doing is like literally share my experience and what helped me through my way. What are the alternative treatment methods, and what are the alternative solutions can people use to heal themselves and take them through like much more healthier and clear spaces.
yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
I think you touch on such a great point, or just off the back of my question. I mean, there are no simple answers or solutions when it comes to mental health, because as you said, it is like a deep ocean, and each one of us are in different oceans and in different parts of the ocean. So yeah,
exactly.
I think you being able to share your personal experience will be really interesting for many people that will be able to personally relate to it, and many people that may not even know that these kinds of experiences exist for others. So that will be really amazing
Yeah,
if you could do that.
yeah, sure. So um, like I'm coming from a really worry based family. So like my mom and my dad is really like they have this approach of we love you, therefore we worry for you. And like basically from my childhood, I just grew up in this worry based ecosystem where I learned how to worry to protect myself. And maybe also because of the model that I explained in the beginning, like the biopsychosocial model, maybe I was carrying other elements in me so that I was more drawn and I was more like a bit shifted towards the anxiety or worrying. And after the puberty, like when I went through the college, I was studying engineering and like it was really intense. And I like actually my first mental health problems started to really manifest themselves in college. So I was trying to really like focus on my major, which was like really complicated. And to be honest, like I wasn't super interested in the subject. But I mean, I just like was going with that move and going with that energy. But I started to really see I was like getting paralyzed by my thoughts. I was thinking too much. By then I wasn't aware that that's type of a like that's called anxiety or that's called like overthinking, but I was literally like paralyzing myself, paralyzing my own experience and limiting my capability to create or learn or read with and by my own brain. And I was really like I wasn't aware in the first stage that I was doing that to myself. I was just thinking, okay, like this is pretty much like a human experience, maybe like maybe all of us or everyone is going through that.
Mm.
Or maybe like I was in between, maybe I'm normal or maybe I'm abnormal. So I was in between those two. So maybe I'm the only one who is going through that, or maybe it's normal. And I didn't know. And actually I was so embarrassed or too ashamed to talk about these stuff with my parents as well, because I was thinking about like obsessively about the topics that I shouldn't be thinking about.
Yeah.
And like and when I moved through my life, like actually first I realized that, and I started to just navigate my life within that for couple months without getting help, and then it was really too much because I was spending too much time just like doing my assessments and like homeworks. And I mean, I was seeing my friends just like spending maybe half an hour while I'm doing like 5 hours, and I was just like started to see that there is something going on there, like in my life, in my thinking pattern. So
Mm.
then I actually started to research about it. And basically I find like two alternatives in that stage. So the first one was like the meditation and mindfulness field, and the second one was like more conventional therapies. So I
Can
told,
I interrupt you for a second
yeah, of
there?
course.
Because I just think it's interesting to note, like, when you then started to take a more active approach to understanding and identifying, what's actually going on with me right now, and my energy levels, my thought patterns, and so on. And you mentioned that then you started researching it.
Yeah,
Did you feel like you could speak to other people about it, or what was that? In terms of connecting to what was going on and connecting to the information on mental
yeah.
health, what was that journey like?
Yeah, it was really difficult. Like, even though I have like an amazing open relationship with my parents, I was like getting scared about they will also judge me, and they
Mm.
will like, because for me, growing up in a really stigmatized country was like if you go through a mental health challenge, you are crazy. And I grew up with this belief of like mental health is craziness. And I didn't learn that mental health is like the foundation of health. I was like more in this, oh, mental health. Like it was really a scary concept. So I was really actually scared to search about it, take action on it. Um, and yeah, it took me like a really big amount of time to completely like maybe not even completely, to be honest. Like I still have some stigmas and still has some shame about that, but I really progressed. But yeah, the first initial phase was really difficult. But my family was really supportive. We arranged like a therapy session, and then we arranged like a also I started to do mindfulness sessions. So it was like 11, 10 years ago, I started that journey. And I was really drawn into mindfulness because I felt really uncomfortable talking with a stranger at the first stage. Like I was really like, oh, that's too much. I don't want this person to know my deepest shit, the deepest like thoughts or darkest thoughts. And I was really like not comfortable with that because of all the stigmas that's moving through me. I wasn't really like comfortable or happy to move with the psychotherapy part, so I dropped that. I just moved into meditation and mindfulness. And as I said, I was doing transcendental meditation, which was Maharishi's mantra-based meditation. So it was like you repeat certain types of mantras and you rest your attention on those mantras. So the attention on your brain moves to that mantra. So that journey moved me through yoga, through spirituality, through different elements, and I became like a really motivated and passionate in those fields because I saw like the effects. um, I saw the effects, but so the life moved on. I joined Google. The life got a bit more complicated, and I actually deepened my spiritual practices. I did like a lot of trainings on yoga, a lot of trainings on mindfulness. Traveled to really healing centers of the world. Like I was really working with myself. Um, but what I felt, I was feeling really separated between the spiritual world and the capitalist world. So it was like I started to feel the separation that's happening within me. So um, yeah, I was going to India, then coming back to Google, and I was trying to like live that life within Google, but it was so difficult, so challenging for me. And when I was more challenged, I was increasing the amount of practices that I was doing. But then I noticed that I was taking too much responsibility for my mental health because of the stigmas, because of the fear about talking about or sharing about your mental health problems. I was just actually choosing that path of spirituality to completely like own my problem and also like show the world that I'm strong enough so that I can tackle with my problems.
Yeah, and and
Um,
and just on that, I think that's so relevant because while doing all of that and still trying to have a job and maintain your relationships and look after all the other elements of your
yeah,
life, like you're a human being with a finite amount of energy.
yeah,
So yeah, it is an important thing to be able to know when to reach out and to know that it's actually okay to do that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, then I started like this pressure and the weight on my shoulders because the anxiety was there. I didn't like take really like a professional help towards my overthinking. And like because I noticed that I was having really like obsessive thinking, so I was spending a lot of time thinking, and which most of the times moves into more anxious fields where I feel really shit about the future, where I feel the fear in me, and it was like taking a lot of energy and space. But as I said, I was like really, oof, I don't want to talk about this with anyone, and I can deal with that. I can deal with that. So um, then I noticed like this pressure and the weight, and I was completely ignoring the Western approaches, which is like more conventional approaches, like the psychotherapy, medication. I was completely like, oh no, 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 this is not for me. uh, because I was associating. Sorry, I was associating those stuff with like more severe conditions, and I was really scared about like um, getting this label on me that I'm mentally ill. That's why I was really like pushing all of those away.
Mm.
Um, and then I guess like life just pushed me back, and I just like I start to be in a really stressful and anxious state, which is. Um, do you hear the background voice too much?
No.
No, that's perfect. There are guys who's like trimming the grasses. Uh, so so like the pressure in my life just increased a lot. I'm talking about 3.5 years ago. And I just came to a point where my anxiety was crazy, really, really crazy. Like it was the worst intensity of the anxiety that I ever experienced. Um, and in that phase, it was like mostly in a week, spread it into 10 days. And I was really like experiencing super intense emotions and like panic attacks and sorry, like panic attacks, and it really took my sleep away. I wasn't able to sleep well, and I was really like experiencing a super dark phase of my life, and I was super scared. Like I really didn't know what to do about it. My spiritual practices not weren't enough because I wasn't even be able to do meditation, sit still, or like being able to do yoga because my mind was like, oof, like it's crazy.
Yeah.
And um, and then I was, because of all this fear and stigmas and like fear about getting help, I was just like keep pushing myself to navigate and survive through these circumstances by myself alone. So that pressure was huge. So actually that pressure put me in a downward spiral, which I was just going down each day. And my catastrophe levels were going further and further and further. It was like really intense levels of anxiety. And um, at the end of this like 7 to 8 days of this phase where I was really pushing myself to survive in the world and be capable, because I didn't know that I was able, like I am able to take a sick leave due to mental, like a stress or anxiety. I didn't know that I'm able to talk with my managers, or I wasn't able to open up to my peers about like, guys, I'm really going through a shitty time, and
Mm.
I need this. I didn't know what I need, what my need is. I didn't know what's my boundaries, what's my capabilities. I was so scared about getting judged or
Mm.
labeled as a mentally sick person. So it was like really, it was really like I'm inside of my shell, and I was like trying to work with my stuff. And because of this trapped feeling and lack of sleep for maybe 7 8 days, like I was sleeping 1 2 hours a day and I was trying to continue my life. It was really horrible, that feeling. um, and I remember like one night, it was a Sunday night, I just woke up and I felt this like feeling of like I don't really feel any meaning in my life. It doesn't really make any more sense.
Mm.
And that was really scary, Kristen. Like that was really like, oof, okay, that's something that I need to solve, because I was on the edge of um, like stopping or moving on. You know,
Yeah.
I was really in this edge, and this edge was completely created by my own mind, and of course with all this other stuff like stigmas, and I was feeling really trapped.
And just before you continue, I think
Yeah,
it makes sense that you would. It's easy to end up in a space where you feel trapped and isolated and alone, because
yeah,
even if you do have the courage to reach out, because of the lack of education and awareness on many of these mental health issues, you don't even know what to reach out with, or what kind of help to ask.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not that there's not people there that are willing to help, but it's just not even knowing, like you, all you know is that it's crazy inside, and you don't know how to necessarily ask someone for help, you know.
Yeah, and I noticed like that's an amazing point. I noticed like even like some of the professionals in the fields, or like many people who is not educated in this field, is really like not aware about what's going on in some conditions, in some phases. And like I also experienced that, like I was trying to open up slowly, but the reactions were so triggering and so closing, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm just not gonna do that. Like the lack of education in the world about this topic, like how people can support each other and how you can hold a space for a person who is going through those difficulties. I think that's really key.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I think it's so crucial. I mean, that's been a big pillar of conversation today, is holding space for someone. I mean, speaking to the people from Crisis Text Line, and I
Yeah,
asked them, you know, what are some of the key skills that your text responders have or are taught, and it's listening and to be empathetic, which those two combined is all you need to do is to create a space. You don't have to have all the answers to uh, or solutions to whatever the person is sharing with you in that moment.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah. So true.
yeah,
But it's definitely like a really difficult environment to be in. Like it's a really tricky place to be in. Like when you
yeah,
are really experiencing a severe mental health or a psychological condition, it's really scary. And like when you experience a physical health, like a severe physical health condition, it's pretty scary as well. But it's pretty straightforward.
yeah,
Like you can talk with anyone, and like there are like they can show you all the options, and they can show you all the ways how
mhm,
you can treat and heal yourself. It's pretty straightforward. But when it comes to mental health, it's like everyone is so scared. Everyone is like even like I was remembering, like we were having a discussion with my family. Like my family was like bit scared about me going on a medication, or like even your closest ones, even the loved ones, has some like preconditioned ideas about mental health, which
mhm,
might take you away from your proper healing and proper
yeah,
treatment.
yeah,
I know so many people who is not just like ignoring the treatment because they are just like so scared about um, their peer group, their community, and getting judged.
yeah,
Um, so also that's adding another layer of in the healing and treatment of mental health.
yeah.
Um,
I think the connection you mentioned there between, you know, physical health and mental health is not as straightforward. I mean, like an example I'm just thinking of is my roommate fell down the stairs a few weeks ago and sprained her
yeah,
ankle. And since then, she's been quite intentional about not going for runs and trying to stretch it, trying to rest it, because she knows if I put pressure on it,
yeah,
that it's never going to heal. And I think with mental health, it's like we have these injuries or impairments or areas that maybe need a bit of work, but we don't know what kind of behaviors would make them better or perhaps would make them worse. And
yeah,
often, like the way that you might react when you are feeling in a state of mental stress uh, is a behavior like running on that sore ankle, you know, and
that's it.
it's
Yeah,
so difficult to get yourself out of that space.
that's it.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a
We're
tricky
going to
one.
be,
It's a
yeah,
really tricky one. But I mean, I was really privileged and lucky, to be honest. I mean, when I was in that state, I I just like had my ex-partner, had my family like through the phones or like. But anyways, like the support net was really strong, and when I was open to get help because I was really scared and I didn't want to go through that path of like damaging myself or like ending my life. I wasn't really comfortable with that path because deep inside of me I fucking love life.
Yeah.
I'm so connected here, and I'm like I was really also equipped with all this like philosophies and like all these thought mechanisms that somehow bring you to that state of mind, which is like completely mind created, like a place where it's completely created by your mind, and you are living in that little movie. And if you really take action on the thoughts that your mind is telling you to do, it's the end. And it's crazy, like you somehow can create this movie for you even though you have like everything in life, you know, like
Mm.
it's a really tricky and a really complicated state of mind to be at. Um, and so again, like I was really lucky and privileged to be able to go through that with a beautiful support net. And I start to like receive proper treatment as well as continuation with my spiritual practices. What I mean by proper treatment, of course, like there are a lot of proper treatments, but for me it was like a first serious treatment. So I was put on a medication. I started to have like a psychotherapy sessions, and I was also continuing my spiritual practices like mindfulness, yoga, and all the other stuff that was serving my soul and serving me, my body, my mind. And also, my psychiatrist advised me to like just give it a break, you know, give it a break to Google, take a sick leave, because really I wasn't capable to continue. And as you said, like your body needs to heal, but like when it's the mental health problems, it's an invisible thing, so that you look at the mirror and you see like I'm fine actually, like I don't have any problems, but there is something in your brain that needs to rest, that needs to just stop and heal.
Yeah.
But when it's physical, it's really obvious because you cannot, for example, the ankle example, you cannot really step on it. If you step on it, it hurts. And everyone can also support you in that because everyone else can see, oh, your ankle, and
Mm.
like how we can help. But like mental health is really, really tricky because it's invisible, so much stigma, and nobody knows how to communicate through. And you also don't know how to um, take rest over it and like really heal it. So then um, I just like moved into like the biggest healing phase of my life with these treatments and with opening up to like the professionals as well as like the spiritual side of things. So it was for the first time I was acknowledging the both learnings and both pillars of healing and psychology. So before that, I was only acknowledging the spiritual parts, and after that crisis, after that breakdown, I had to move through the Western approaches because I needed like a biological treatment as well.
Mm.
I needed that like I needed my brain chemistry to move into somewhere normal so that I can operate in life again. Of course, it's like a really controversial topic. Like there are a lot of different approaches in that field. Like some people are really against medication. Some people are really like, yes, medication is crucial in some cases. I'm not really sharing any professional advice here, but from my experience and from my research, um, basically like the biggest like most effective healing for me was mixing those two,
Yeah.
mixing like medication, mixing psychotherapy, and also mixing the spiritual side of things. That really like increased my healing pace, and also like made me much more comfortable about things that I'm going through. um, and again, my case was anxiety and maybe anxiety disorder, we can call it. And there are like many different cases. Like there are mood disorders, personality disorders, psychotic disorders like schizophrenia and bipolar. There are eating disorders, substance abuse disorders. Like it's really massive, again, the pool. So, and one doesn't fit all. So there are like different approaches for different conditions and different problems. But for my case, for anxiety and also like anxiety-linked depression, that combination really helped me to move forward.
Mm.
and then I really like I start to feel like there was a like a curtain in front of my eyes, which I was like trying to see the world, but it was like really like where is the world, like where is the light, where is the sun? But it was there was always this like thoughts and emotions, like intense shit was
Yeah.
like blocking my view, and like it was always foggy and blurry. So after that phase like started to move, of course like these stuff takes some time, like medications start, like you start to feel the effects maybe after a month. So I was going through that, and I started to really like see the more clearly. And like the psychotherapy work that I'm doing is really like a subconscious work, which is coming from a Freudian approach. So it's um, like most of you know about Freud, like and his ideas, and his most traditional way of psychotherapy. He's basically like seen as like the father of the psychotherapy, and he introduced the psychoanalysis. And then like there were a lot of different methods developed on his approaches. The psychoanalysis approach is you have to 3 to 5 times a week with your therapist. It's like huge time and money investment. But the model that I was doing is called psychodynamics. So it's like still the Freudian approach, but it's linked with the the today's people who has like really limited time and limited motivation to much into their psychology. So these stuff really started to help me a lot, and then I really start to feel more drawn into this field of being, how to maintain like a good mental health, how to like heal yourself. That healing process like opened a new door on me, and just like give me so much passion, so much drive in life. And now like these days, all the stuff that I'm doing, like all the stuff that I'm trying to create is linked with this field, because as a first-hand sufferer, like you know how difficult it is when you are going through that. And
Mm.
when you are out of this, I really feel responsible, to hold space for people and hold space for anyone who might be going through that. Because it's like really big actually. Like when you look at the stats, basically like 50% of us, like 50% of humanity will go through like a mental health issue in their lives.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, like we all have mental health, even though it's really healthy or even though it's really unhealthy. Like you all have mental health. It's like also same as the physical health. It can get unhealthy. It can get broken. You can go through some problems in your mental health. So
Mm.
basically, like this process of darkness just gave me a lot of hope and a lot of drive and passion towards moving deep into this field of research. And like I feel really I dedicate myself to this work.
Yes. Yeah, I
Mm.
personally have that, and I'm very inspired by you and all that you do. Thank you for sharing your journey. I think it's such a crucial part of this overall conversation is, as you said, holding space for people to share. Um, you mentioned some of the high stats of people that experience different elements of mental health.
Yeah.
And in one of our conversations earlier, we were chatting about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one whole pillar of needs is for love and belonging.
Yeah.
And if we aren't being more intentional about creating space for people to express themselves, whether that
Yeah.
be some of the good parts of life we want to express, but also the bad parts, because life is, as we were having a conversation about the other day, life is about a series of dualities, and you want to be able to express the fullness of life, not only the good parts. um
Yeah.
so firstly, thank you for having the courage to share, and also just having the passion about creating space for other people to share. I think it's definitely something that has inspired me to lean more
Mm.
into this space. And yeah, it's inspiring to think about, because I think the more people that hear these kind of conversations and have those aha moments where they can resonate with what you're saying, they
Yeah.
might go downstairs and chat to their roommates about it or chat to their family about it, and it starts to spiral. So that's what we
Yeah.
need. If one of the biggest barriers with mental health is the stigma, awareness,
Yeah.
and education, the conversation has to start somewhere.
Yeah. These are such a beautiful points, Kristen. Thanks for like bringing that up, especially the duality, which I was completely ignoring all my life.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like I was completely trying to get rid of this darkness, get rid of the dark, get rid of the night, and was just pursuing the light and the happy, the positive side of things. But as you said, like it's all about the duality and it's all about the fullness. It's about like energies meeting and merging together. And basically, like my situation, I was trying to get rid of this darkness and I was trying to push away this darkness. And
Mm.
that's why I wasn't experiencing the light, because like when you completely ignore and don't accept the dark, how you can accept the light in the fullest? When
Mm.
you completely acknowledge like there's this space fully like from your heart, and then that space opens up by itself. um, so it's really crazy like that. We are living in a world which really values about the positive stuff, but it's also like I learned all my lessons, and like I gained all my depth through the negative experiences that I'm going through in life. And again, like we were talking about this other day, like you just like the day but you don't like the nights. But like it's essential, you cannot just skip the nights. You don't, if you don't sleep, if you don't rest, if you don't restore, you cannot really be full in your days. It's the same logic, it's the same mindset of like owning your darkness and owning your the dark side and embracing it in the fullest, not because you want to experience the positives, but really just the sake in the sake of the sake of owning that. Because like
Yeah.
when I notice myself, I'm just like embracing or accepting the darkness because I'm really tired of this. It doesn't work for me. Like I when I'm in this space or of okay, I'm really like accepting you as you are, darkness. And when I'm having this commitment, when I am having this conversation with that side of myself, then the light, then the this like more positive emotions and positivity opens up themselves.
Yeah.
um
I wonder if you could give some practical examples of how to do that. So just also a bit of background to some of the people that may be listening. And Tolga, I'm just going to have a fangirl moment on you for a little while. But so Tolga also leads a bunch of meditation practices. And like earlier this year, you held a beautiful space on a retreat. And I think something that you did really well there was we had these kind of conversations so that we could understand them. And then we went and did certain exercises which enabled us to be present with darkness, as you say, or to have courage to look your fears in the eye and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of thinking about
yeah.
yeah, like if you're sitting stuck in your head, like what are the things that you can do in that moment that might help you to slow down and just be able to coach yourself into a space of firstly being at peace with where you're at to some
Yeah.
or other degree, and then how to move forward.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, I'm happy to share. Like the first of all, I want to bring this scale of mental health again to this like
Yeah.
discussion. When we talk about mental health, I see it from 0 to 10. 0 being suicidal, like really having a trouble with yourself in any condition that you are, and 10 being like fully in a loving space, purely accepting yourself and like really good healthy mental health. So when you're going in between 0 to 3 maybe, you or 0 to 4, I'm not sure like how you rank your states, but it's really important to seek for professional help. That's the number one advice.
Yeah.
So what I mean by professional help is like talking with therapists, talking with psychiatrists, and really owning your problems.
And if you are above that stage, like you are just having like minor stresses, minor anxieties, or just like overthinking about things too much, or if you somehow like heal yourself through those like darknesses, then I can talk about like 4 pillars, which is like really, really beneficial for me. So I think the first pillar is the energy therapies, like energy-based therapies. The second pillar is mind and body-based therapies and works. The third is like more creative and expression-based therapies, and the fourth, like the last one, would be the alternative healing methods, which is more like, ooh, it's a bit interesting. Like there's a lot of like discussions and arguments going in that field, but I will go over them shortly. So what I mean by energy therapies is basically like sound healing, Reiki healing, pranic healing, like crystal healing, qigong, like these kind of therapies, like acupuncture, which really works with your energy fields. So it happens on a subconscious level. So it's not basically you do something, but you receive the healing in that side. So mind and body based therapies means the therapies where you engage with your mind and body. What I mean by that is like simple methods like meditation, mindfulness practices, like you can do it through many different apps. There are a lot of courses these days, yoga, breathwork, and all of those bunch. There is also like, if you want to go deeper in mindfulness practices, there is a course which John Kabat-Zinn developed in the US. It's an 8-week mindfulness-based cognitive therapy course, and it's getting offered by many different amazing therapists across the world. So it's a mindfulness based cognition therapy. So it's basically like similar to CBT, to the ones that who knows CBT, but it's incorporated with mindfulness. And also in the mind and body based spaces, you can also do like dance meditations. I love those spaces, like 5 rhythms embodiments, where you meditate with movements. um, and last two is like creative therapies, expression based. I love that part as well, because I feel um, like I was also researching and reading a lot about Rollo May, which is like an amazing existential psychotherapist, and he talks a lot about creativity, and he has an amazing book called Courage to Create, and that's like such an inspiration. And I think like creative therapy shaped by him for me. So it's what I mean by creative therapies is like art therapy, where you express. Kristin, you are really good at that. Like you don't do it as a therapy purpose, but it is a therapy, like where you
Yeah.
express your feelings and thoughts through art. It's amazing. And like music therapy, movement therapy. So you can use those pillars, art, music, movement, by yourself, or you can, if you don't know how to do that, you can just like ask, or you can reach out to a therapist who can hold space for you in a group setup or one-to-one setup. And lastly in that field is active and dynamic meditations, which I'm really big fan of, because it's all about expressing your catharsis and letting the shit inside of you go out, so that you can completely come to a more relaxed and meditative space. And like the most interesting field is alternative healing, basically. Like there, it's like a limitless stuff, especially these days. So you need to be careful about like what you really need. But if you are comfortable with yourself, and if you done your research, and if you know your condition, or your own your condition, it's good to look at. Like what I mean by alternative healing is like the shamanic work, the psychedelic healing, and regression therapies, and herbal medicine, and plant-based medicine, and Ayurveda. So these are like really the stuff that you need to go over, and you need to see which works for you and which doesn't work for you. Because I'm really like, oh, I'm more in a secure and controllable space in my life. But I think these would be my biggest advice for people in the scale, like wherever they are. But again, like the most important piece is, if you are suffering in mental health, it's okay. Like just own it, and go to a professional. Like, don't really try to take yourself out from there by yourself, because it's like much more easier to completely be able to surrender to a professional or surrender to a treatment. And also it's about being patient as well. Like, maybe most of you know, like, if you break some part of your body, it takes like how many months? Like, I never break a bone in my body, but it takes like 6 months, right? Like, sometimes it's more to heal. And it's like similar to the mental health. So it's like big quality in healing is patience. You need to be patient with yourself. You won't see the effects like immediately, you know. You just need to
Yeah.
accept that you are going through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to comment on that, firstly, that was a really great answer to a very broad question, and I think breaking it into different pillars is a nice digestible way for people to go and research those different pillars by themselves. Something that often gets said when it comes to mental health and well-being, just more generally speaking, is that airplane example. You know, when they say, like, if the plane is going down, you must put your own mask on before you put on the mask of others. And I was just thinking, you know, when you were speaking, we've spoken a lot about the importance of creating space for other people to share.
Yeah.
But if we had to go, well, what is step one? What would it look like for me to create space for myself before the
Yeah.
plane is even going down? You know, and I think that for me, like, that's the most practical piece that I try to actively practice in my life and intentionally practice in my life. I mean, you mentioned art as an example. That's something that I do a lot of.
Yeah.
And I think for people that may be listening, you know, just pay attention to how you spend your time and energy. And, you know, speaking to Dr. Trudy Mihan earlier, who practices positive psychology, and she mentioned this flow state, which is basically, you know, those activities where you feel like you've lost track of time, and you have that beautiful sensation of just like wanting to be there forever. And I think, you know, if you haven't experienced that yet, I think that it's a state that most of us can experience. But just pay attention. What are the small things in your life that bring you that feeling of, you know, you've lost track of time and you feel totally immersed in that activity, whether that's music, writing, dance, those all fall under that creative pillar that you mentioned. And if creative isn't necessarily your thing, the fact that there are those other tools, such as you mentioned, energy healing, mind and body, and also some of the alternative methods, it's really inspiring to listen to you say that. And, you know, maybe for some people listening, they might be thinking now, oh, actually, you know, I do a lot of writing and it does make me feel free inside, and I feel like I can express myself there. And I guess there's just a lot of power, first thing, when you can become aware of what that is for you. And secondly, when you can then be more intentional about harvesting that activity in a way that kind of gives you that release from a more mental and emotional perspective.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you for the input here. I really like it.
Yeah, I think those of us, the people who work in the same office as Tolga and I, might see us sitting in the office having these deep chats. That's just what I'm thinking about now. I don't think we've ever had a chat that doesn't go down one of these interesting rabbit holes. Yeah, it's I think, you know, it's been so valuable just hearing a more personal approach to mental health. So yeah, just once again, thank you for sharing your story. And I think the important part that I want to mention is that I think there's so much strength in vulnerability. It takes so much courage to put a voice to these personal parts of mental health. And I just want to acknowledge you and praise you for having the courage to share your story, and how active and intentional you are about doing that in your day to day and on a forum such as this. And I can't help but think about the people that would be inspired to start thinking about this for themselves, holding space for others, and more importantly, holding space for themselves. So yeah, just thank you so much for the work that you are doing.
Thank you, Kristin, for your beautiful words. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Cool. I don't know if you want to offer Zach and Jim any words of advice before we jump off the call, or any motivation, as I'm sure their legs are getting tired.
Guys, I'm really like proud of you, and I'm totally blessed that you are creating this space for us to come together and talk about mental health. Yeah, I really like sending you all the love and all the gratitude that you are doing this work. It's really beautiful. And also same for you, Kristin, like holding the space and like navigating these discussions. I really appreciate it, and the amount of depth you take us through with your questions and with your presence also like was really beautiful. So I'm sure like we will have like an amazing chat later on today. So I will be just like in the live stream as well, watching you guys and getting inspired.
I think
Awesome.
just Tolga from
Well,
my
thanks
point,
so much, Tolga.
I think like what I particularly enjoyed about your sort of approach and is that you really took us back to the basics of like how it can happen to somebody and through that process. And I think that's an angle that is very accessible. So yeah, thank you for that. I think it added to the stream and everybody listening and to the conversation of mental health. So thank you so much for joining us.
Just wanna tag on there. Tolga, some people in the stream have also said, as in like, I recall my phase of transition. Thank you for the great talk, for example, August. But not only in the stream, I can relate to some aspects of your story, and everybody has their own journey, and being so open and profound about it and speaking about it, and well, it resonates, and I think it's just amazing to hear your openness about the story and breaking the stigma, as you mentioned in the beginning as well. It's really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Lots of love. Yeah. See you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Tolga.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.